Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTubers. This is Jerry Dime with How to Get Out of Babylon. I went and did weed whacking to help Bill and Shirley out because they have a freezer loader there who doesn't do a damn thing to take care of the place. Bill's out busting his ass driving all over this country, putting himself at risk to help pay for the place. So anyway, I left my tablet there. This is Ides of March Part 1. Daddy, would you look in the oven and see if that pan of cookies is about done? I've got a rack of bread pans ready to go in. Melinda spoke over her shoulder, standing at the sink, washing up. Breakfast will be on the table in a few minutes. I'm going to... Her father walked over to the oven and opened the door. The spicy smell of oatmeal raisin cookies washed over him, and his stomach growled. Growl. He took a potholder and slid the pan out into the light, judged they were a nice shade of gold, and set them on an iron trivet on the counter. He then slid the rack out of the oven and slid the rack of bread pans in. He was glad the girls only did Miguel's baking twice a week. The place was just too frenetic with activity otherwise. He poured himself a cup of coffee and went into the living room to join the others. With 10 people sitting down every day now, they were too large a group for the kitchen table anymore and had to put the company table leaf in the dining room table to seat everyone. A moment later, Heather and Cindy came in with big bowls of grits and biscuits, followed by Brittany with the sausage. Then came Neil with the big bowl of scrambled eggs. They were just taking their seats when Melinda came in with a big glass pitcher of cold milk. John gave the grace, and the group set into filling their plates. John was buttering a biscuit, looking at the big bowl of grits in front of him, and said, "I've gotten right accustomed to the farmhouse atmosphere of a big family all sitting to the table together. Almost like a family reunion every day. Going to miss that when you all move out, Luke." The doctor smiled as he spooned sugar into his coffee and replied, "Yes, it's nice, isn't it? We'll just have to have each other over for breakfast occasionally for the nostalgia." Lisa said, "Well, I, for one, can't wait to get moved in. You and Ann have been very gracious hosts, but a woman wants a home of her own. I'm going to miss having this crew doing the cooking, though. Looks like I'll have to resign myself to being assistant cook and back up to Heather. The way she's blossomed these last few months, I think there's no question who's the boss cook is now." Oh, I got to move it over here, not on my phone. That's funny. You just want me to do all the cooking all the time. Where is that? Do all the cooking. That's all, Heather poked at her mother. "And you'd be right," her mother replied, sticking her tongue out at her daughter. "You've shown yourself capable of doing professional work, my dear. I'd be a fool not to take advantage of it. Besides, with your dad and I both working full-time," yeah, hello, like we're talking about people that work to support the place, "I'd be a fool not to take advantage of it. Besides, with your dad and I both working full-time and more, few restaurants have reopened, and very little convenience foods in the neighborhood grocery store. Somebody's got to do some real cooking again if we're to eat at all. I've seen what Miguel is charging for your bakery goods in his store. We can't afford a steady diet of that stuff." "Well, I don't know," her husband interjected. "I think the girls will still need objective opinions on their work in order to advance their craft, you know." "In order to advance your waistline, you mean," his wife retorted. "I've seen the way you and John can go through that stuff. It's only because John said they can't use the gas stove for their commercial baking and the girls are having to learn how to finesse a wood cook stove that you get to eat so much of their product. They're getting better at it by the day, so your snacking ways are coming to an end, mister." John and Luke's face fell at this, but the conversation rolled on. Anne asked, "Have they set the date for the closing then? How exciting." Lisa beamed, "Yes, they have. It's this coming Friday. Hank Gartner is meeting us at the title insurance place at noon and is going to bring Brittany. She's very graciously allowed us to buy the furnishings except for her room, with the caveat that we replace them all as soon as possible, for which I don't blame her. Hank's agreeable with that. He's setting up a trust fund for her with her share of the proceeds, but I expect you all already know that. Over the weekend, we'll have everything in the house moved out and the place completely repainted on the inside, so it'll look very different when it's done. When the weather warms, we'll have the outside of the house painted. We'll have those things that Brittany wants to keep brought here, and then everything moved back in." She looked wistful for a moment, then continued, "When we bought our first house, we painted it ourselves. With circumstances being what they are, neither of us can take the time from work now. We did find a painter who came well recommended who gave us a very good price for the job, though. Things being the way they are, there's not a lot of work available, so you can get skilled labor pretty cheap just now, if you can pay for it. Luke grinned ruefully. Well, John, you said Hank was sharp, and you were right. He drove a hard bargain, but seeing as how it was Brittany who was getting the real benefit of it, that takes some of the sting out. The mortgage lender was going to get their share regardless. It still burns me, though, having to sell our old place in town so cheaply. Ordinarily, I'd have sat on it longer, but we're getting anxious. Yeah, let it get destroyed again. Yeah, right. Get out of the cities, people. Get out of the coast. Ain't gonna have nothing. Ordinarily have sat on it longer, but we're getting anxious about the financial system, and we're afraid if we waited much longer, we might not be able to sell it all. Duh. It clinched the matter when I ran the thought past the agent, and she agreed it was a good idea. That meant a substantial reduction in her commission. I'm thinking she felt half a loaf was better than no loaf at all. Yep. Anne frowned at this and asked her husband, John, if the bottom is going to fall out of the economy again, what will this mean for Brittany's trust? You met with Hank yesterday. Is he worried? Well, he replied, actually, yes, he is. That's what he wanted to see me about. We had a conference with the judge in his chambers about Brittany's trust fund. He wanted us both involved. I was rather astonished when Hank said he wanted Brittany's trust to be invested in gold, real gold as in bullion, rather than paper investments or some sort of savings account. Hank's pretty well off, you know. He's an architect by profession, but he told me he made his real money in the stock market once he started making decent commissions. Said he thought we weren't finished with the economic aftermath of the impact and didn't want Brittany to lose everything or most everything in the case of another market collapse or another dollar devaluation. When the judge agreed, I thought I'd fallen through the looking glass. He said it was irregular, but he felt it was within his authority to allow it, and if neither of us contested the decision, then there wouldn't be any problems. He did stipulate that it had to be kept in a safe deposit box of a bank agreeable to us both, and that it could not be withdrawn without both our signatures or those who might be appointed by the court in the future. Hank's already looked in a quote from a bullion dealer in Orlando and will wire him the money after the close Friday afternoon. The dealer will be shipping the gold directly to the First National Bank of Gainesville the following Monday. I was astonished at the price of gold right now, even taking into account the dollar devaluation, so it's only going to be a small box. I'm afraid Hank was anxious to close the deal with the dealer quickly because he said the price has been steadily rising ever since the devaluation. Uncle John, I'm glad you and Mr. Gardner are doing this for me. I don't know how I'll ever be able to repay either of you, quote, unquote. Wait till I get back to that one. I knew there'd be something in this chapter that would verify what's happened this week. Her uncle smiled and said, Brittany, you don't have to pay either of us anything. We're doing this because we feel it's the right thing for us to do. It's in both of our greater self-interest as we see it. Besides, one doesn't pay these sorts of debts back. You pay them forward. Oh my gosh. Forward, she asked. I don't understand. What I mean is that one day you'll have an opportunity to do something for someone else that you'll realize is in your own greater self-interest to do. That's when you'll pay off that debt. This is not to say you have to go out and spend your life in public service, but from time to time there might come an opportunity to help someone who deserves the help, and you'll do it because it makes your own world a bit better. I'm explaining this really badly, I think. I'm beginning to sound like some sort of charitable appeal. I think I'll stop while I'm behind. He chuckled and took a swallow of his coffee. That's okay, Uncle John. I understand, or at least I think I do. John, if Carla, do it on the tablet. John, if Carla, Hank, and even the judge thinks we're going to go through more economic turmoil, is there anything we can do to make ourselves financially safer? Anne looked very concerned. He shrugged his shoulders. Not much, I'm afraid. I've moved all of our money out of the bank other than what we have to have in there to pay immediate bills and keep the accounts open. The university insists on staying with the electronic pay deposit, so we have to stay with the bank. Same for Luke and Lisa. Except for my retirement, we don't have any paper investment, and your retirement is the traditional state plan, so it can't be touched until you reach retirement age. It's been over 6 months since the impact, and the university hasn't called me back yet, so I believe I have full control over my retirement accounts now. So I suppose we could pay the penalty and withdraw it, but we'll take a terrible beating to do it. Between the early withdrawal penalty and the loss of value of the various funds I'm in since the impact, we'd lose years of past growth. It has been on my mind, though, and I'd like to discuss it with you later. The prospects of yet more economic gloom brought conversation at the table to a standstill, so everyone attended to their plates for a time. Good night.